Thank you very much for that comment. It is true. Human rights violations are on a rise in Uganda. And internationally, we have been recognized by the Freedom House as a non-free country. In 2023, looking at our civil rights and the political liberties in our country, the Freedom House decided that Uganda was not a free country. Looking at our political space, it has shrunk so badly that the ruling party, the National Resistance Movement, has denied the opposition political parties any right to expression, assembly, and they have completely refused them to mobilize. Just yesterday, my husband, who is the president of the leading opposition political party in Uganda, the National Unity Platform, was in Mbarara to mobilize crowds, but the police and the military denied him access to a venue which they had earlier notified the police about and had also announced to the general public that that's where they were going to engage. On top of that, when he reached the radio station where he was supposed to speak to the people, the radio was switched off air. I read the headlines in the Daily Monitor today saying that radio switched off air as Bobi Wine visits Mbarara. That was yesterday. Today, Bobi Wine was in Fort Portal. Fort Portal is just next to Mbarara. He put up a roadmap where he has to go to different places. So in Fort Portal, they did the same thing. The ruling government made sure that Bobi Wine does not meet the people there. They were denied access to the playground where they had booked to meet the people. Political space has shrunk. It is unfair, and it shows that our government is so cowardly towards democracy. And looking at the national level, it is true there has been human rights violations, especially by the UPDF, which was ranked by the Uganda Human Rights Commission as number 3 in human rights violations in our country. We all know that the Uganda People Defense Forces abduct, they arrest, they torture, and they detain suspects in military detentions, and they keep them away for so long incommunicado, and also they never bring these victims to court for any court proceedings. It is also very well known that the UPDF has been involving themselves in political activities in our country, and the perpetrator of this is General Yoweri Museveni, who is the head of the army in Uganda. He is the chief commander. If the chief commander wakes up one morning in 2015 and appoints a military general, Ewan Aronda Nyakirima, to a ministerial post of the internal affairs, then you know that it is insane. Appointing a military boss into a ministerial position is not allowed, and the Constitution of Uganda as amended 2005 is against it. The Penal Act is against it. The Penal Code Act is against it. We have the UPDF Act, which is against it. And we have the Political Parties Act, which is also against the same issue. Actually, if you are a military serving officer and you involve yourself in the politics of our country, that is a punishable offense by law. If you commit that offense, you either pay a fine or you are detained in prison for not more than a year. But we all know that the courts of law don't work in Uganda, and the first time Aronda Nyakirima the late was appointed minister by Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, people went to court. A lawyer called Chiza went to court, and the Constitutional Court has never had this case. Even when Katumba Wamala was appointed in 2017, there were voices that came up against it. We also had Henry Tumukunde. He was appointed minister when he was still serving in the army. The cherry on the cake is the general who is Kainerugaba Muhoozi, the son of Yoweri Museveni, the current sitting president of Uganda, who is openly going around the country campaigning for the presidency of Uganda come 2026. He has consistently, openly continued to campaign and involving himself in political gatherings, associating with a political party, which is the NRM, even when it is against the laws that govern the UPDF. We know the UPDF has failed in their duties to protect our country inside and at the borders. Recently, we had an issue of purported rebels who got into our country through Kasese and torched 44 students to death, to ashes, who they found in a dormitory at night. Just yesterday is when they buried the 4 bodies that were never claimed from that arson. So we know very well that the perpetrators of human rights and the violators of human rights in our country are the UPDF, and they are encouraged by the President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni. It is no secret anymore that the journalists of our country work under fear. They are abducted, they are beaten, they are coerced. We know a lot of patronage goes on, and civil society does not say anything. We have an example of human rights non-government organizations closing. We also know that there is one office that works on human rights in Uganda, and that is the government-founded Uganda Human Rights Commission. The UNHCR was recently sent packing. It is true that human rights violations is the reason why the World Bank has frozen credit to Uganda, and I am worried that we might end up doing monetary financing in a time when our inflation is so high. It will be so painful if our government starts printing money to cover up the gaps that are existent in our budget. So in conclusion, it is true, human rights violations is the reason our country is going to the dogs.
What do you say to that?
The government may deny, but we have the international bodies properly saying that Uganda lacks the respect for human rights. The Freedom House has qualified Uganda as a non-free country. The Freedom House looks at the civil rights and political rights of a country to determine if they are free or not. So they have said that our political rights are 1 out of 4 according to their measurement. And then you look at what they have done to the United Nations human rights body in Uganda. After 18 years, the office has closed. Museveni insists on having just one body, which is the Uganda Human Rights Commission, which is a body he chooses to have in position to be the only body that reports about human rights back home. It is because of the lack of human rights that World Bank has frozen credit to Uganda. So lack of human rights is a big problem back home, and it is not what we say, but it is what even the international bodies see. And even when you look at the national level, the Human Rights Commission, which Museveni put in position, has come up to say that the Uganda People's Defense Forces are the 3rd high-ranking in violating human rights. So if you look at the body, which is supposed to be protecting the people, being the leading in human rights violations, then you know it's no secret, and it's not a propaganda, and they are not lies. It is true, and the information is out there.
Would you like to see the International Criminal Court take more action?
The International Criminal Court has a case which reported, and we are waiting for hearing. Yes, they should take